A pretty successful 9-year run and finale that almost ruined it all. No one knew that we'd be hearing the words Game of Thrones anytime soon, especially with that ending. But with the announcement of a prequel to the series, the fans were once again ready to be taken back to Westeros, way before the events of the original series ever took place. With the premiere of House of the Dragon drawing in more than 10 million viewers, making it the largest premiere ever in the history of HBO. People have mixed feelings about the prequel as of now. But even then, even the most avid haters of the Game of Thrones finale can't help but give in to the thrill of it all. But what exactly is House of Dragons going to be about? And are we sure that it won't go down the same route as its predecessor? Stay tuned until the end of this video to find out more about the show and all the crazy theories that are already surrounding it. Where did we leave things off? For those of you who need a refresher, the explosive finale of Game of Thrones ended with Bronn ruling over the Seven Kingdoms as the king, with Jon Snow killing Daenerys. The Iron Throne is destroyed once and for all. We see Sansa being crowned Queen of the North, and Tyrion takes his rightful place as Hand of the King, while Arya embarks on her own personal adventure. As far as everyone's favorite character Jon Snow goes, he leaves everything behind to go and live with the wildlings and the love of his life, Ygritte. The final moments of the show feature the member of the Night's Watch walking out, and the gate dividing the two worlds slowly opens, bringing the story full circle. Why do people hate the finale? All in all, the finale sounds like a pretty happy ending, right? Then why are fans still so upset about how things ended, even 3 years later? Well, to put it simply, the 17 million people that tuned into the final season of the show think that the story was too rushed in the end. To wrap it all up in one season, the writers left us with too many plot holes and not enough resolution to problems that had been building up for 9 years. All in all, most people put the blame for the show's downward spiral on bad writing and the plot deviating away from George R.R. Martin's original narrative. Character arcs that the show had spent years on were let go of just for the convenience, and the finale just didn't have any of the storytelling elements that made the show as it was. So all in all, even though the Game of Thrones kept us all captivated for years, fans have still not been able to get over how disappointing the last episode really was. And while people believe that the negative association with the original show's ending would affect any spin-offs, it seems like House of the Dragon has successfully managed to navigate that route and is now on its way to amass just as much, if not more, of a cult following than the original show. What's it all about? For anyone who hasn't watched a single Game of Thrones episode, here's the good news for you. House of the Dragon is actually set 200 years before the events of the original show, so technically if you consider chronology, you can easily watch House of the Dragon even if you don't know a single thing about Game of Thrones. The show is based on George R.R. Martin's novel Fire and Blood and tells us the story of the Targaryen Empire and how it became what it was in the first season of Game of Thrones. The show is set in the time of King Viserys Targaryen and gives us a look at the intense power struggle that went on in the family of the dragons, with Aegon attempting to rule over the Seven Kingdoms. At the same time, Viserys is caught between his firstborn Princess Rhaenyra and his brother Prince Daemon, as the entire house of Targaryen goes at each other to rule the Iron Throne. How long will it go on for? The number one reason why Game of Thrones flopped with its final season was that the writers just didn't have any source material to take inspiration from, with Martin only having finished 5 books in the story, leaving us hanging. But House of the Dragon is a completely different situation because Fire and Blood only has 2 volumes, out of which the show is based on the one that has been published. The source material of the show covers the entire history of the Targaryen house, with chapters like the Targaryen Conquest, the Peace of the Dragon, the Sons of the Dragon, Heirs of the Dragon, the Dying of the Dragons, and Aftermath, the Boy King and his Regents. And if these titles are anything to go by, there's enough content for the showrunners to make at least 5 seasons without having to depend on their own wits to develop the narrative. And hopefully by the time that's done, Martin will have Volume 2 ready. Fingers crossed, right? Do the other houses have a say? Now, as soon as the prequel was announced, the fans knew that this show would primarily be telling us the origin story of House Targaryen, giving us a look at Dany and Jon's ancestors and how they lost their right to the throne. But in all of that chaos, the other houses are bound to make an appearance, right? After all, Westeros is nothing if not a bunch of powerful families trying to one-up each other constantly. For now, what we know is that the House of Stark and Lannister is 100% going to be featured in the show. And while the plotline will obviously not revolve around their origin stories, the writers might leave a few Easter eggs here and there for fans of the original show. At the same time, Houses Hightower, Velaryon, and Strong are also going to be central to the story despite having gone extinct by the time we enter the Game of Thrones timeline. Of course, the Hightowers are heavily involved with the Targaryens, with Otto Hightower being the king's hand. But with the tensions between Otto and Daemon soaring high, there is potential for a lot of brand new conflict in the show. So what's the deal with Daemon? Speaking of the show's most intriguing, and let's be honest, most attractive character, the trailer gives us a brief glimpse of Daemon holding what looks like a dragon's egg. Now, for those of you familiar with Game of Thrones lore, you would know that the only person who can hatch these eggs is a pure-blooded Targaryen. Well, of course, Daemon fits the bill here. So why do we see the Targaryen presenting this egg to Otto? It seems like the gift is more than just a simple offering, and instead is a way for Daemon to assert his power as a Targaryen. Matt Smith does a remarkable job in portraying the character with all of his quirks, and right off the bat, Daemon is charming, intriguing, and intimidating, giving the audience all the tension they need to be hooked to the show from the very first episode. The final 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. The one thing that made watching Game of Thrones so enjoyable was all the fan theories that the show sparked. And let's just say that the prequel is no different. With just 1 episode released, fans are already speculating as to how the show can move forward and how its events will tie in with the original show. In doing so, most fans believe that the prequel has actually completely disregarded the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. Wait, what? Are you saying that we can finally put the underwhelming finale to rest? According to fan theories on Reddit, House of the Dragon is a symbolic continuation of the Season 6 finale where we see Dany returning home to conquer Westeros. House of the Dragon opens with a similar shot, this time with Rhaenyra returning to the King's Landing on her dragon. The thematic commonality has led people to believe that this is the writer's way of telling us that the Season 6 finale directly leads us to House of the Dragon. And it all makes sense. Why? Well, because the last 2 seasons are so thematically different from the rest of the show, which is why the prequel is there to fill in the void. The story of Westeros. Now, because this prequel is set way back in time, fans believe that this is where we will get to see all the historical events that have been referenced throughout Game of Thrones. All the great battles, power struggles, throne usurpations, and rebellions. House of the Dragon is where we will get to see the history of Westeros unfold in a way like never before. People are also hoping to see how the 7 kingdoms recovered and transitioned to what they were in the original show after the Targaryens had been defeated. How did all the dragons go extinct? How exactly did the Baratheons come to power? And how did the Mad King go mad? All of these questions are the ones fans are hoping to receive answers to with the House of the Dragon. Is Dany part of the show? Well, considering the fact that the show takes place 200 years before Daenerys was born, it's pretty likely that her character will not be making an appearance in the prequel, right? The theories do suggest that the show will take us on a journey where we will understand exactly why she decided to burn down King's Landing and all those poor civilians in a bout of rage. The scene was unlike Dany as we knew her, and fans believe that this was the moment when she was titled the Mad Queen, following in the footsteps of her father, being plagued by whatever illness destroyed him. This is where House of the Dragon can come in and explain exactly why the Targaryens are cursed and what the real story is behind the Red Keep. So, is madness just a Targaryen house trait, or is there more to the story? That's exactly what we're hoping to find out as the show goes on. A world where dragons rule. Dany's entire sorrow in the first few seasons of Game of Thrones revolves around the fact that the world is not as she remembers it, and by that, we just mean that the world just doesn't have dragons flying all over the place anymore. However, House of the Dragon shows us a completely different picture, taking us back to what Dany talked about. According to sources, the show will feature around 17 different dragons, with their riders being Daemon, Rhaenys, and Rhaenyra, amongst the others. The dragons that will make an appearance on the show will include Caraxes, the Bloodworm, Meleys, the Red Queen, and Syrax. But what the fans are really excited to see is whether or not the infamous Balerion, the Black Dread, King Viserys' very own dragon, will make an appearance. While it's assumed that Balerion has already passed away before the show's events start, fans are still hopeful that we might get a look at this beast through the time jumps and flashbacks that the show has promised to make use of in its storytelling. And that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, The Focus, for more movie-related news. And we'll see you next time. Until then, bye.